how are you feeling today?
Oh, wow. Right to the deep questions.
Yeah, but no, really, take a second right now. How are you actually feeling in this exact moment?
It's harder to answer than people think, isn't it?
It really is. And if you are anything like the vast majority of people out there, and especially if you are someone who is currently learning English or constantly communicating in English as a second language, I can almost guarantee that your brain just automatically served up a very specific, almost robotic response.
Let me guess.
Go ahead.
You probably just thought, or even whispered to yourself, I'm fine.
Exactly. Or maybe I'm good.
Right.
Or, if you are feeling particularly adventurous today, you went with I'm okay.
The holy trinity of small talk.
Okay, let's unpack this because we get asked this question dozens of times a week. At the coffee shop, on video calls, passing coworkers in the hallway.
Yeah, constantly.
And we just hit play on that same pre-recorded tape. But are you really just fine?
Probably not. I mean, rarely are we actually just fine.
Right. So our mission for today's deep dive is exploring a really fascinating stack of language learning source materials focused entirely on how to break free from that exact loop. We're looking at how to talk about emotions and feelings in English.
And this is such a critical area.
It is, but the goal here isn't just to hand you a vocabulary list. We want to discover how to express those feelings naturally, calmly, and with actual confidence, rather than just, hiding behind, I'm good.
Yeah, and what is most interesting about these materials is that they treat language as something far more significant than just a tool for transmitting data.
How do you mean?
Well, we often fall into the trap of thinking that when we speak a second language, our only job is to get the grammar right and deliver the facts, like a computer.
Right. Subject, verb, object, get in, get out.
Exactly. But language isn't just about exchanging information. It is the primary way we share the complexities of our internal emotional experiences. The core argument here is that if you can't accurately express how you feel, you are missing out on human connection entirely.
I hear that, but let me push back a little right out of the gate.
Sure, go for it.
Is it always about deep human connection? Because think about the everyday reality. Like, just this morning, I was rushing to get to the studio.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I had left my laptop charger on my kitchen counter. It started pouring rain, and I stepped into a massive puddle that soaked my right shoe completely through.
The absolute worst way to start a day.
The worst. So I walked into the lobby. My sock is literally squishing with every step, and the security guard looks up and says, "Hey, how's it going?"
And what did you say?
I smiled, completely ignoring the freezing water in my shoe, and squeaked out, "I'm good, thanks. How are you?"
Of course you did.
Right. But isn't that just polite? I mean, if I had stopped and said, "Actually, I am deeply frustrated by my lack of preparation and physically uncomfortable because of my wet foot," the poor guard would have been terrified.
He would have called for backup.
Exactly. Sometimes "I'm fine" is just the socially acceptable script, right?
It is. That is a perfect example, and you are highlighting exactly why "I'm fine" becomes such a heavy crutch. We use it because it's incredibly safe.
Safe, yeah.
The sources point out that these default phrases require absolutely zero vulnerability. When you say "I'm good" with a squishing shoe, you're putting up a shield.
You're saying, "Don't look at me."
Right. You're signaling to the security guard that you are functioning, that you don't require any emotional support or intervention, and that the interaction can be completed in 3 seconds flat.
Which is all he really wanted anyway.
True. But there's an added layer here. When you are communicating in a second language, "I'm fine" demands almost zero cognitive effort.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
When you're operating in a language that isn't your native tongue, or when you're simply stressed out like having a wet foot, your brain naturally seeks the path of least resistance.
It's survival mode.
Exactly. Pulling the word "good" from your memory takes no work at all. Pulling up the precise vocabulary to describe a nuanced feeling of being overwhelmed, slightly cold, and frustrated, that takes real effort. So we default to safety.
Right, so it's a survival mechanism for small talk.
Yes. But the issue the materials raise is what happens when that survival mechanism becomes your only mechanism. If you use "I'm fine" with the security guard, that is perfectly appropriate. But if you use "I'm fine" with your partner after a terrible day, or with a close colleague who is asking why a project is falling behind, the cost of that safety is connection.
Okay, I see what you're saying. You're using the exact same tool for a brief hallway passing and for an actual relationship.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, The sources introduce a crucial distinction here, the difference between transactional communication and relational communication.
Transactional versus relational.
Right. Transactional communication is an exchange of goods. Here is my ticket. The meeting is at noon. I am fine. It's purely about efficiency.
It's treating language like currency.
Yes. Relational communication, on the other hand, is about building a bridge between two people. To illustrate this, the authors of these materials ask us to compare two different responses to a very common question, which is, how was your day?
Okay. What are the responses?
Response A is simply, it was busy.
Which is purely factual. Like you said, it's a transaction of information. You asked about my day. I gave you the schedule. It was busy.
Exactly. Now look at response B, which is the alternative they suggest. It was busy, and honestly, I felt a little overwhelmed.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's completely different.
By adding that second part, the speaker is taking a raw fact and revealing the emotional reality behind it. They are inviting the listener into their experience.
Suddenly, it isn't just about a calendar.
It's about a human being. Give the other person something real to respond to. Instead of just nodding and saying, cool, the listener can now ask, why were you overwhelmed? Can I help with anything? It opens the door to actual empathy.
That is a massive difference. But wait, if we're telling people to move from response A to response B, from transactional to relational, especially non-native speakers, we are asking them to do something incredibly difficult.
It is difficult.
Because finding the right word when you are already feeling emotional is hard enough in your mother tongue.
Yeah.
Doing it in a second language while you're stressed, that's a huge hurdle.
Which is exactly why the materials don't just tell you to be more emotional.
Yeah.
They provide a very specific foundational set of vocabulary words to replace those robotic responses. They advocate for mastering a small group of core words first.
Keep it simple.
Yes. For positive or calm emotions, they suggest focusing on words like calm, relaxed, excited, happy, peaceful, proud, grateful, satisfied, and relieved.
That's a solid list.
And for difficult or negative emotions, the list includes overwhelmed, nervous, tired, stressed, and worried.
You know, looking at that positive list, something jumps out at me right away. The very first alternative they offer to I'm good is the word calm. The example they give is simply, I feel calm today. And I have to admit, if a coworker asked how I was, and I just said, I feel calm today, it might sound a bit like I'm doing yoga at my desk.
It does sound a little zen.
Why prioritize the word calm? Why not happy or great?
It might sound unusual at first because we're so conditioned to evaluate ourselves on a scale of good to bad. When you say, I am good, you are actively passing a judgment on your day.
Right, you're grading it.
Exactly. But calm is different. It's descriptive.
Yeah.
It is a physiological reality. The materials prioritize calm because anxiety is the primary enemy of language learning and effective communication.
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
By teaching a learner to identify and articulate the state of being calm, you give them a baseline. Most of the time, we aren't jumping for joy and we aren't in crisis. We are just neutral.
But saying I am neutral sounds like you're a robot.
Exactly. I feel calm signifies a lack of distress. It's a peaceful self-assessment that doesn't require the high energy of forcing a fake smile and shouting, I'm great.
I see. It's permission to just exist without having to perform happiness.
That's a perfect way to put it. But there's a second, critical step to using this vocabulary. You can't just memorize the list of words. The materials heavily advise anchoring these basic emotions to daily experiences.
And anchoring them. How do we do that?
By using the word because, or tying the emotion to a specific event in the sentence.
So how does that look in practice?
The examples they give are sentences like, I feel relaxed after my walk, or I'm excited about the weekend, or I feel happy because the weather's nice.
Okay, so instead of just floating the emotion out there in a vacuum, you are pinning it to a real-world cause.
Yes, and there's a very practical reason for doing this, particularly for language learners. If you just stare at a flashcard and repeat, relaxed, 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 it remains an abstract concept. It's just letters on a page.
It doesn't mean anything to your body.
Right. But when you say, I feel relaxed after my walk, your brain associates the English word with the physical memory of that walk, the fresh air, your muscles unwinding.
You're proving to your own mind that the emotion is real.
Yes, you are linking the vocabulary to a lived sensory experience.
Oh.
This is how you move a word from a textbook into your active, usable vocabulary. It sticks better.
Let me try this. So instead of just saying, I was frustrated, I should anchor it. I was frustrated because my shoe was soaked.
Perfect.
Oh,
It gives the listener context, and it cements the word frustrated to that specific annoying feeling of a wet sock.
Ooh, okay. I can see how that builds a great foundation. But here's where I still see a potential pitfall. Let's go back to the workplace scenario.
Okay.
If I use one of the negative words on this list, let's say stressed or overwhelmed, and I anchor it, I might say to my boss, I am stressed because of this project.
Right.
That feels like I'm throwing a grenade into the room. It sounds absolute. It sounds like a crisis. How do we communicate a negative feeling without sounding like we are having a total meltdown?
That is a brilliant observation, and it leads directly into one of the most useful strategies outlined in these materials. Here's where we look at the use of small modifiers.
Small modifiers.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. Native speakers rarely experience or express emotions at exactly 100% intensity or 0% intensity. We live in the gray area. We live in the nuance.
Yeah, nothing is ever totally black and white.
Exactly. So to capture that, the sources suggest adding detailed words to show the intensity of the feelings. Dial it up or down. The specific modifiers they highlight are phrases like a bit, really, quite slightly, and a little.
Oh, so it's like a volume knob for your feelings.
Yeah, it is a fantastic analogy.
Right.
Let's look at your workplace example. If you say, I am stressed, the volume is at a 10. It is a blunt instrument. It might alarm your boss.
Yeah, they might think I'm quitting.
But what if you apply a modifier from the text, I'm feeling a bit stressed today, or I'm slightly worried about that meeting? Do you hear how that changes the entire dynamic?
Oh, wow, yeah. Saying I'm a bit stressed sounds entirely different. It sounds like I'm aware of the problem, but I am still in the driver's seat. It hasn't taken over my life.
It softens the emotional delivery. It makes you sound calm and balanced, self-aware, rather than negative or dramatic. It signals to the listener that you are experiencing a difficulty, but you are managing it.
That's such a useful tool for non-native speakers who might be afraid of sounding too aggressive.
Exactly. And this works for positive emotions, too. The materials give examples like, I'm really excited about this weekend, or I'm feeling quite calm today. Using words like quite or slightly is the hallmark of a natural speaker.
Because it shows you aren't just reading from a dictionary. You are actually calibrating your language to match your exact internal state.
Yes, it brings authenticity to the conversation.
That is incredibly practical. It gives you the safety of I'm fine, but the honesty of a real emotion.
Exactly.
And speaking of sounding natural, I noticed the materials also bring up natural idiomatic expressions, specifically chunked phrases. Instead of just giving single adjectives, they recommend learning entire phrases as a single unit.
Yes, that's a huge step.
The main example they provide is in a good mood. So instead of just saying, I am happy, you say, I'm in a really good mood today.
Mastering these chunked phrases elevates a learner's fluency instantly. It is a massive shortcut. When you learn a phrase like in a good mood as one single block of meaning, you bypass a very common trap.
What trap is that?
The trap of direct word-for-word translation.
Oh, right.
When learners try to express a complex thought, they often construct the sentence in their native language in their head first, and then translate it word by word into English. This often results in sentences that are technically grammatically correct, but sound incredibly clunky or unnatural to a native ear.
Because idioms don't translate literally.
Exactly. By adopting in a good mood as an entire chunk, you don't have to think about the preposition in or the article a. You just deploy the whole phrase at once. It immediately makes your conversational rhythm sound authentic.
That makes a lot of sense. You aren't building the car from scratch every time. You are just grabbing the keys and driving.
I love that. Grabbing the keys.
So if we take all of these pieces, the foundational words, the anchors, the volume knob modifiers, and the chunked phrases, how do we put them together in a real conversation? The materials emphasize this idea of storytelling, specifically mixing emotions.
Yes, because in everyday life, our experiences are rarely just one note. We are complicated. And the source material highlights that expressing this complexity is a powerful way to practice English. They introduce a specific structure for contrasting emotions to create a miniature narrative.
A narrative, like telling a whole story.
Not a long story, but a miniature narrative arc within a single sentence. The mechanism they use for this is the word but.
Just but.
Just but. Let's look at the specific examples they provide. The first one is, today was busy, but I feel satisfied. The second one is, I was nervous before the presentation, but now I feel relieved.
There is a real rhythm to those sentences.
Let's break down the mechanics of why it works so well. Take the first half. Today was busy. You are setting the scene and acknowledging a potentially negative or draining state. Then comes the word but. This is the pivot.
It signals to your listener that a shift is coming.
Finally, you provide the resolution. I feel satisfied.
So you are taking the listener on a tiny journey. Problem, pivot, resolution.
Exactly. And doing this proves something vital to the person you are talking to. It proves that you are self-aware. You aren't just blindly reacting to your environment. You are capable of processing complex, even contradictory realities in real time.
You can acknowledge the hardship of a busy schedule while simultaneously owning the positive outcome of feeling satisfied.
Right. This is a very high level of relational communication, and yet the vocabulary required to do it is actually quite simple.
I really want to try this, and I encourage you listening to try it right now, too.
Yeah.
Think about your morning today. Can you describe it using one emotion word in a contrasting event, just like we discussed?
Let's hear yours.
Let's see. I was completely soaked by a puddle, but I'm in a good mood now.
That is a perfect execution of the structure. You used the but pivot, and you incorporated the chunk phrase, in a good mood.
It actually feels really good to say. It feels a lot more honest than just, I'm good.
It is more honest.
But let's address the elephant in the room here. We can have all the vocabulary in the world. We can know exactly where to put the word because and the word but. But when you are actually standing in front of a native speaker and they ask you a question, the physical panic can still ruin the delivery.
Oh, absolutely.
The materials touch on this, and it might be the most fascinating part of the whole stack. They talk about the link between nervousness and the speed at which we speak.
It is a very common biological reaction. When you are trying to find the right English word, anxiety often kicks in. Your brain perceives this as a threat.
Like a physical threat.
Yes. That triggers a mild fight-or-flight response. Your breathing gets shallower, your heart rate increases, and your instinct is to rush through the sentence just to escape the uncomfortable situation.
Yes, you just want to get to the end of the sentence so the spotlight is off you.
But rushing is the worst thing you can do. When you rush your speech, especially in a second language, your mouth struggles to keep up with your brain. You stumble over pronunciation. You forget your grammar.
And then you panic more.
Exactly. When you hear yourself make a mistake in real time, it instantly generates more anxiety, which makes you speak even faster. It is a vicious cycle.
So how do we break the cycle? The materials actually give physical instructions here, which surprised me. This isn't just language advice. It's almost like mindfulness or public speaking coaching.
What's fascinating here is that the physical solution they provide is very deliberate. They instruct the learner to slow down their breathing, take a small, intentional pause before speaking, and then say the sentence clearly.
Taking a pause on purpose.
The example they format in the text is very specific. I feel a little nervous today, then a pause, but I'm doing my best.
Let me try to replicate that pacing. I feel a little nervous today, but I'm doing my best.
Okay, I'll be honest. Taking that intentional pause feels terrifying. When you are in a conversation, a 1-second pause feels like an hour of dead air.
It feels like an eternity to you, but to the listener, it just looks like you are thoughtfully considering your words. It actually makes you appear more confident.
Really?
Yes. But the real magic of this technique isn't about how you look to the listener. It's about what happens inside your own body. We usually assume that we have to feel calm in order to speak calmly. But the physical act of forcing yourself to pause, taking a breath, and slowing down your words actually sends a signal back to your brain that you are safe.
It interrupts the panic cycle.
It physically interrupts the production of stress hormones.
So by acting calm and speaking slowly, you actually trick your body into becoming calm. It isn't even a trick. It is simply muscle memory and biological regulation. You are using the physical mechanics of speech to take control of your psychological state. When you speak calmly, not only does your English sound more confident, but you actually become calmer internally. By slowing down, you give your brain the fraction of a second it needs to retrieve the vocabulary we've been talking about. The anchors, the modifiers.
The pause gives you the space to construct the miniature story.
Precisely.
That is incredibly empowering. You don't have to wait for the panic to pass. You can actively dismantle it with a pause.
You're taking back control.
So we have the vocabulary, the modifiers, the storytelling structure, and the physical breathing technique. How do we make this permanent? Because I know myself. I can learn all this today, and by tomorrow morning when someone says, "How are you?" I will immediately blurt out, "I'm fine."
It takes practice to rewire the brain.
Right. And the materials suggest a daily habit to do exactly that. They call it a self-reflection exercise.
And the instruction they give is remarkably straightforward. Every single day, you need to ask yourself the question, how do I feel today? And then, and this is the crucial part, You must answer it out loud in English.
Out loud. Does it have to be out loud? What if I'm on the train commuting to work? I can't just start talking to myself about my feelings in public. Can't I just think it?
Thinking it is passive. When you only think about the words, you aren't engaging the physical mechanics of speech. The source explicitly states that this small exercise helps your brain connect emotions with English sentences.
So the physical act of speaking matters.
Immensely. When you formulate the answer and speak it out loud, even if you just whisper it to yourself while walking from your car to the office, you're engaging your mouth, your vocal cords, and your ears. You hear your own voice speaking of the target language. By doing this daily, it moves the vocabulary from passive memorization to an active, lived experience.
You train your neural pathways.
Exactly. You build the instinct to reach for these specific English phrases when the corresponding emotion arises, rather than reaching for, "I'm fine." The recommended daily answers can be simple. I feel calm today, or I feel a little stressed. The key is the vocalization.
It's like practicing scales on a piano. You do it alone so that when you are on stage, your fingers just know where to go.
That's it, exactly.
But what if I make a mistake? What if I'm practicing out loud and I use the wrong preposition or I mess up the past tense? I feel peaceful. Wait, felt peaceful.
This brings us to a vital reminder, included in the materials. They explicitly tell the learner, your English does not need to be perfect.
Perfection is the enemy of communication.
Exactly. What matters most is communication. Even simple, slightly flawed sentences work perfectly well.
I think that is a major leap for everyone listening. You don't need complex grammar to be understood. You just need honesty and a few core words.
It represents a fundamental shift in priorities. In traditional classroom environments, accuracy is often prioritized above all else. Students become terrified of making a grammatical error, so they stay silent. Or they revert to the safest, most robotic phrases.
Back to I'm fine.
Right. These materials are giving the learner permission to prioritize the truth of their emotion over the perfection of their grammar. If you are having a terrible day, saying, "I feel tired, but I'm okay," might not be the most elegant sentence ever constructed. But it is human. It is understandable. And it's infinitely better than a fake, "I'm good."
When you offer a simple, emotionally honest sentence, the listener rarely notices a small grammatical flaw anyway. They hear the human being behind the words.
Exactly. They connect with the emotion you are sharing. The ultimate goal of acquiring this vocabulary is not to pass a linguistics test. It is to participate authentically in the world around you.
This has been such a practical, eye-opening exploration. Let's look back at the ground we've covered today.
We covered a lot.
We did. We started by identifying the problem, that automatic, robotic, I'm fine, that we use as a shield. From there, these materials guided us through a complete toolkit for natural expression.
We learned the foundational words, starting with calm, to establish a peaceful baseline.
We saw how crucial it is to anchor those feelings to a real-world context using because, so our brains believe the words we are saying. We found the volume knob for our emotions, learning to use modifiers like a bit or really to sound nuanced and reasonable instead of dramatic.
We practiced the art of the pivot, using the word but to tell a miniature story that shows we can handle complex days.
And we tackled the physical panic of speaking by learning to pause, breathe, and slow down our delivery. And finally, we've got a daily out-loud habit to build that muscle memory with the ultimate permission to be imperfect. So what does this all mean?
Learning a language is not just about grammar. It is about expressing your thoughts and emotions. Embracing this makes your English more natural and your conversations infinitely more meaningful.
It changes English from a subject you have to study into a tool you get to use to live your life.
It really does. And this raises an important question. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
We've talked about how to translate your true feelings into English. But consider this. Psychologists often suggest that the vocabulary we possess actually dictates the limits of what we can feel. If you expand your emotional vocabulary in a second language, are you just learning to translate your feelings? Or are you actually building the capacity to experience new nuances of emotion that you never had access to before?
Wow. So the new words might be creating the capacity for new feelings. That is an incredible thought to end on. I want you to take that thought with you today. The next time someone asks you, how are you feeling? Take that intentional pause. Take a breath. Ditch the default, I'm fine, and see what happens when you use your new words to show them your actual reality. Your words might just reshape your internal world. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We will catch you on the next one.